Remember that smell of something sweet baking in your grandma's oven? The kind of dessert that didn't come from a box, but from a handwritten recipe passed down for generations? Today, we're opening the dessert drawer of the past and rediscovering 25 long-lost American desserts your grandma probably made. And we've all but forgotten. From gelatin salads to mayonnaise cakes, these treats were everywhere until they weren't. Stay with us because number 7 is so bizarre, you'll wonder how it ever became a thing. 1. Hermit Cookies. Hermit Cookies were spicy little treats filled with raisins and nuts. They came from New England and were packed into lunchboxes during cold winters. Moms and grandmas loved them because they stayed soft for weeks. These cookies were chewy, sweet, and warm with cinnamon and cloves. The name Hermit came from how long they could hide in cookie jars without going bad. Soldiers even got them in care packages during the war. You could smell the brown sugar and nutmeg before you walked into the kitchen. Kids would grab one, take a bite, and smile. They were soft on the inside and crisp on the outside. Grandmas used big mixing bowls and wooden spoons to stir the thick dough. Sometimes they pressed the cookies into bars and cut them into neat little squares. Other times they made soft, round drops on wax paper. No store-bought cookie could compare to these. They had a homemade taste that felt like a warm hug, but slowly people stopped baking them. Today, very few people even know what a hermit cookie is. The recipe cards are fading and the cookie jars are empty. But the love behind them? Still strong? If your grandma made hermit cookies, you were lucky. Maybe it's time to bring them back. What do you say? 2nd, Junket. Junket was a soft, milky dessert that kids loved in the early 1900s. It was made with milk, sugar, and a special tablet called rennet, which helped the milk turn into a smooth, jiggly treat. Moms made it when someone was sick or needed something easy to eat. It came in vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry. Grandmas poured it into little bowls and let it cool on the windowsill. The texture was like pudding, but lighter and silkier. Junket was gentle on the tummy, so it was perfect for small kids or people with colds. You didn't chew it. You just let it melt in your mouth. It was like a warm, sweet hug. Every spoonful tasted like comfort. It did not need fancy toppings or crusts. It was simple and calm, just like life used to be. Back then, almost every kitchen had rennet tablets in a drawer. Moms made it in minutes with ingredients they already had. It was cheap, sweet, and full of love. Today, almost no one talks about Junket. The name sounds odd and the recipe has faded away. But once, it was the quiet hero of dessert time. 3. Shoefly Pie. Shoefly Pie sounds funny, but it was a very real dessert. It came from the Pennsylvania Dutch and was made with rich molasses, brown sugar, and spices. Moms baked it often, especially when there was no fresh fruit around. It had a crumb topping, a gooey middle, and a crisp crust. The sweet smell filled the kitchen and brought everyone running. The molasses gave it a deep, bold flavor you never forgot. The name came from all the flies the sugary pie attracted while it cooled. Moms had to literally shoo the flies away. But once it was ready, kids forgot all about the bugs. People sometimes ate it for breakfast, not just dessert. One slice could fill you up and make you smile. It was thick, messy, and absolutely delicious. Back in the day, it was baked in heavy metal pans and shared with neighbors. Churches served it at potlucks and bake sales. It was more than food. It was community. Today, you rarely see it outside Pennsylvania. Most kids have never even heard of it. But if you love bold flavor and old-school sweets, this pie is worth bringing back. Yesteryear. Chiffon Pie. Chiffon pie was like eating a cloud. It was soft, airy, and sweet, and made with whipped egg whites and fruit juice. Moms often made lemon chiffon for Easter or spring family dinners. The filling was light and fluffy, not heavy like cheesecake or pudding. The crust was either graham cracker or a homemade flaky shell. One bite felt like sunshine in your mouth. Chiffon pies were a big deal in the 1940s and 1950s. They showed off a mom's baking skills and patience. Folding the egg whites gently was the secret to making it perfect. Sometimes they added fresh fruit or whipped cream on top. The pies looked fancy but felt fun. They were cool, refreshing, and perfect on hot days. Grandmas used hand mixers or whipped everything by hand. The sound of mixing filled the kitchen like music. It was work, but it was worth it. Then came boxed pies and quick recipes, and chiffon pies faded away. People wanted faster, simpler desserts, but fast is not always better. Chiffon pie deserves a comeback. Let's not forget how sweet soft can be. Try baking one. You might just float away. 5. Oyster Ice Cream. Yes, oyster ice cream was real, and people actually liked it. It was made with cream, sugar, and real oysters, and served cold. Back in the 1800s, it was a fancy treat for dinner parties. It started near the coast, where oysters were fresh and cheap. People loved trying bold, new flavors. It was salty and sweet, rich and smooth. Some even said George Washington liked it. Wealthy families served it during banquets to surprise their guests. It was a sign you were cultured and bold. The ice cream was made by hand, churned with salt and ice in wooden buckets. It took time and muscle to make, but people were proud to serve something so unusual. Eventually, people moved on to chocolate and vanilla. Oyster flavor became too weird for most folks. The recipe slowly disappeared from kitchens and cookbooks. Today, most people would never try it. It sounds more like a prank than a dessert. But back then, it was a mark of creativity. Would you try a scoop if Grandma made it? Maybe not. But it shows how daring dessert used to be. 6th, election cake. Election cake was a huge spiced cake baked for voting days in the 1800s. It had raisins, nutmeg, and even a little booze. Families and neighbors brought their best to the polls for a shared treat. This cake was baked days ahead because it took time to rise. Grandmas used old wooden bowls and long wooden spoons. The kitchen smelled like Christmas and community. Slicing it while it was still warm meant the spices floated in the air. People shared slices while talking about votes and local news. It was part dessert, part town meeting. Election cake was thick and heavy, almost like bread. It was full of fruit and flavor, not sugar and fluff. You could taste the care in every bite. As politics changed, so did dessert trends. Cakes became lighter, smaller, and less tied to one day. Election cake slipped off dessert lists. Today, election cake is nearly gone but not forgotten. Some bakers bring it back for history events. It tastes like old traditions preserved. Would you bake a cake for today's vote? Imagine the smell of spices greeting voters at the door. That is the power of food and history. 7. Baked Alaska. Baked Alaska is a grand dessert that starts with cake, then ice cream and finishes with hot meringue. The meringue is lightly toasted on top until it glows. It looks fancy and tastes like magic. It was invented in the 1860s and became a hit in high-end restaurants. Moms eventually learned how to make it at home. It felt like bringing a showpiece into the kitchen. When you cut into it, cold ice cream meets warm meringue. It is sweet and exciting. The kitchen light looks like a stage when you serve it. Making it takes care because you have to keep the ice cream cold while you make the hot topping. The meringue goes on with a torch or hot oven for just seconds, but the effect is wow. After the 1960s, fancy dinners became rare at home. People switched to simpler treats. Baked Alaska became a memory of special occasions only. Today, it is a rare sight at home tables, but some party planners bring it back as a showstopper. It is a dessert that deserves its spotlight. Would you serve a baked Alaska at your next party? It reminds us that food can surprise and delight. Let's keep the magic alive. 8. Velvita Fudge. Velvita Fudge might sound strange, but it was real. People mixed Velveeta cheese with chocolate to make it smooth and rich. It was a mid-century kitchen experiment that wowed some sweet tooths. This fudge was creamy and unusual. It melted in your mouth and felt silky. Some tasted the cheese hint, others just wanted more. Grandmas made it for church bazaars or potlucks. It stood out among plain chocolate treats. Someone always asked, What is in this? But once store-bought fudge became better and cheaper, the cheese variation lost its wow. People stopped making it at home. The recipe cards vanished. Today, Velvita Fudge sounds like a joke or a dare, but back then it was a proud kitchen secret. It shows how creative cooks used what they had. Would you dare to try Velvita Fudge? It might taste like creativity in a bite. Sometimes odd is delicious. 9. Tomato Soup Cake. Tomato soup cake was a Depression-era treat that used pantry staples. It used tomato soup, flour, sugar, spices, and raisins. It smelled like gingerbread and tasted even better. It was baked in big pans and shared at community events. Moms used soups you already had at home. No odd ingredients or fancy tools needed. The texture was moist and soft, with dots of fruit in each bite. It looked dark like chocolate but tasted lighter. The soup kept it tender and cozy. Kids thought it was magic, cake from soup. Teachers loved it because it was simple and cheap. It taught kids that good flavor did not need expensive items. But when flour and sugar became easier to get, soup stayed in bowls, not cakes. Tomato soup cake slipped away from regular baking lists. Today, the recipe is a nostalgic novelty, but a few communities still bake it for history days. It is proof that creativity came from hard times. Would you mix soup into your cake today? It shows how humble kitchens created sweet comfort. History tastes better than we think. 10th. Green Tomato Pie. Green tomato pie is a mock apple pie made from unripe tomatoes. It was a smart way to use green tomatoes before they ripened. Add sugar and spices, and it looked like apple pie. When fall came around, green tomatoes were everywhere in gardens. Moms chopped them finely and stirred in cinnamon and sugar. The filling smelled warm and spicy. The crust held everything together like a cozy blanket. One bite and you believed it was apple. Only later did you realize your taste buds got tricked. Children loved to guess what was inside. Guessing meant extra fun at dessert time. It was part mystery, part flavor. Eventually, real apples became cheap and easy to get. Green tomato pie lost its place at the table. People moved on, but it is still baked at fairs in some towns. It shows that resourceful kitchens made tasty treats from what they had, and they did it with a smile. Would you taste a pie made from green tomatoes? It might surprise you and maybe win your heart. That is the magic of forgotten desserts. 11th Lane Cake. A fancy 4-layer cake with white sponge, raisins, and a bourbon-spiked custard filling. It was named after Emma Rylander Lane, who published it in 1898 and won prizes with it. Moms made it for special events and weddings. Kids loved the rich custard filling made with egg yolks, sugar, butter, raisins, and bourbon. Some versions added pecans and shredded coconut for extra flavor. One layer bite felt like a holiday in your mouth. It took a lot of work to make. 8 egg whites whipped into the cake alone. Bakers used pie tins lined with paper, not cake pans. It showed off kitchen skill and patience. The cake became famous when Harper Lee mentioned it in To Kill a Mockingbird. That made people curious and it became a Southern household name. It was part of family history. By the 1960s and 1970s, modern cakes replaced it. People had less time for long recipes, but it still stood for tradition and care. Today, Lane Cake is Alabama's official state cake. It pops up at fairs and historic dinners, but most families no longer bake it regularly. Would you take on the work and make it today? Maybe it could be your special occasion cake. It is sweet, bold, and loaded with history. On Ikinchi Ozark Pudding. Ozark pudding is not pudding. It is more like a fruit and nut custard cake. It came from Missouri and was President Truman's favorite dessert. It packed apples, nuts, sugar, and custard all in one dish. Some say it came from French Huguenot desserts and was adapted in the South. Other stories credit a Charleston tavern cook in the 1940s. Whichever version is true, it ended up beloved in Midwestern kitchens. The pudding is gooey on the inside, crispy on top, and full of chewy fruit and nuts. It was easy to make with pantry ingredients. One bite was like comfort and crunch together. Moms baked it in big pans and sliced it warm for guests. It was perfect for family dinners. The aroma of sugar and apples would fill the house. It faded away as new desserts became popular, but it never left the memory of families who made it. Some cooks still bring it back today. If you bake it now, you are baking history. A slice is a taste of old America. It is simple, sweet, and full of soul. 13. Hummingbird Cake. Hummingbird cake is a moist, fruity, spice-scented dessert from the South. It is layered with bananas, pineapple, and pecans, and often topped with cream cheese frosting. It rose to fame in the 1970s before sliding off the mainstream radar. Grandmas made it for potlucks and church dinners. It was sweet and tangy all in one bite. The frosting made it feel like a treat. The cake's origin is a bit of a mystery. Some say it started in Jamaica and migrated to the American South. Either way, it became a community favorite. It had a tropical twist with pineapple and spicy warmth with cinnamon. The cake was soft and moist from the fruit. Every slice had a mix of textures and tastes. Then, like many vintage desserts, it got replaced by simpler box mixes. The once beloved sweet drifted out of home bakers' minds. Yet some church cookbooks still carry its pages. Would a slice of hummingbird cake bring your kitchen to life? It is full of flavor and nostalgia. Maybe it is time to bake it again. 14th Cottage Pudding. Cottage pudding is a plain, butter cake topped with a sweet sauce or custard. It first appeared in 1894 in the Recipe's Tried and True cookbook. Moms baked it because it was quick, easy, and crowd-pleasing. The cake is dense and moist, almost like a shortbread but softer. You pour warm vanilla, lemon, or chocolate sauce on top. The sauce soaks in and makes each bite rich. It was a school fundraiser classic, simple enough for young bakers to help. The cake tasted homemade and real. It reminded kids of Sunday dinners at Grandma's. Church ladies made it for bake sales and neighbor visits. Everyone knew the recipe by heart. The plain cake was not boring. It was art with sauce. As desserts became more elaborate, cottage pudding fell out of favor. Bakers went for fancy tarts and layered cakes instead, but some families still bake it for old-time flavor. Would you try this humble cake? It brings back the taste of simpler times. All it needs is butter, sugar, and love. 15th Dober Cake. Dober Cake was invented in New Orleans in the 1930s by Beulah Ledner. It is a Hungarian-inspired layer cake filled with pudding and covered in glaze or fondant. It was a bakery star, especially in Mardi Gras season. The cake layers are thin, soft, and moist. Each layer has chocolate, lemon, or caramel pudding in between. It felt fancy but friendly. Ledner's Bakery made it famous across Louisiana. Families ordered it for parties and holidays. It stood for local pride and local taste. In later decades, Dober cakes became harder to find. Granddaughter bakeries sometimes kept the tradition alive, but it was never a national hit. Today, some New Orleans shops still sell it. It is a reminder of city flavor and creativity. One slice tastes like jazz and culture. Would you bring a Dober cake home today? It is sweet, layered, and full of history. Let's keep this city treasure alive. 16th Wacky Cake. Wacky Cake is an eggless, dairy-free chocolate cake that started in the 1940s. It became popular during World War II when people could not get eggs or milk. Bakers mixed everything in one pan and poured in vinegar, oil, and water before baking. This cake was light and fluffy, even without eggs or butter. It smelled like rich chocolate while baking. Families loved it for how easy it was to make in hard times. They called it names like Crazy Cake or Depression Cake. School cafeterias and church bake sales made it often. It felt special, even though the recipe was humble. Grandmas stirred it right in the pan. No messy bowls or special tools were needed. That made it perfect for busy kitchens during wartime. Children loved licking the chocolate batter. Moms loved how the cake cost almost nothing. It was simple, sweet, and full of comfort. After rationing ended, Wacky Cake faded from many cookbooks, but some families still bake it today. It shows how great desserts can come from simple ingredients. Would you bake a cake with vinegar in it? It might surprise you how good it tastes. Wacky Cake reminds us that creativity can be delicious. 17. Broken Glass JellO. Broken Glass JellO was a colorful, chilled dessert from the 1950s. It mixed cubes of brightly colored gelatin with creamy white gelatin. When sliced, it looked like a stained glass window on a plate. Grandmas made it for church dinners and holiday meals. It was simple. Cube JellO, stir into creamy gelatin, then chill. It looked fancy, but was easy to prepare. Each bite had different flavors and colors. It was crisp and cool in the summer, and it sparkled on the table, catching the light. They served it in glass dishes so the colors shined through. The dessert was always a conversation starter at get-togethers. Kids loved guessing the flavors. Later, it faded when new desserts came along. Few people made JellO gems anymore. But it stayed in memory for those bright colors. Some families still make it today for reunions. It is a living memory of the 1950s. Who wouldn't want a slice of that on a summer day? Would you try this jiggly rainbow dessert? It invites smiles, color, and a bit of nostalgia. 18. Chocolate Mayonnaise Cake. Chocolate mayonnaise cake became popular in the 1940s when eggs and butter were hard to find. It used mayonnaise instead, making the cake rich and moist. It sounds odd, but it tastes amazing. People once called it the $100 cake because of a fun rumor. The name stuck, and the cake became popular in home kitchens. The taste always made people smile. Grandmas stirred in mayonnaise and coffee to boost flavor. They baked it in big pans for family dinners. The result was soft and chocolatey. It became known as a cake that needed no extra frosting. The flavor was strong on its own. It was always the first dessert to go at gatherings. When eggs and butter were easy to get again, the cake faded away. It stayed in some cookbooks, but not in many kitchens. Still, a few families kept the recipe. Today, bakers are rediscovering how moist this cake is. A spoonful of Mayo brings big flavor. Would you try this wartime favorite? 19th. Pineapple Dainty. Pineapple Dainty was a light and fluffy dessert served cold. It mixed canned pineapple, whipped topping, pudding, and sometimes marshmallows or nuts. It was a cool treat for hot summer days. Grandmas made it in big glass bowls for picnics and family dinners. The layers looked bright and creamy. It felt fancy, even though it was easy. Kids loved the sweet pineapple and creamy texture. It melted in your mouth like a soft cloud. Every bite felt like sunshine. The recipe needed no baking, just mix, chill, and serve. That made it perfect for busy moms in the summer. Over time, people started making other layered desserts instead. This one slowly disappeared, but a few families still keep it alive. Would you make Pineapple Dainty for your next party? It is simple, fun, and full of old-school charm. Sometimes easy tastes the best. 20. Peanut Butter Banana Icebox Pie. Peanut Butter Banana Icebox Pie was a no-bake dessert from the South. It had bananas, creamy peanut butter filling, and whipped topping. It was chilled in the fridge, not baked in the oven. The crust held fresh banana slices on the bottom. Then came a smooth layer of peanut butter filling. Whipped cream topped it off. It was rich, creamy, and cool. Kids asked for seconds. It felt like summer on a plate. Moms made it during warm months or when the oven was too hot. It was perfect for church picnics or family potlucks. Everyone looked forward to dessert. When fancier baked pies became popular, this one faded. It stayed in some handwritten cookbooks, but fewer people made it. Still, it never truly left Southern hearts. Would you try this peanut butter and banana dream? One slice might bring back memories you did not know you had. Cool, easy, and full of flavor. 21st. Fancy Lemon Bars. Fancy lemon bars were once a bright favorite at church bake sales. They had a buttery crust and tangy lemon filling dusted with sugar. Every bite felt like sunshine in your mouth. Grandmas baked them in square pans lined with parchment. The smell of citrus filled the kitchen. Kids couldn't wait for the bars to cool. The crust was crisp and the lemon layer was soft and tart. Powdered sugar added a sweet whisper. They were easy to hold and even easier to eat. People baked them for spring picnics and Mother's Day. They looked fancy but were simple to make. One batch could feed a crowd. Then boxed mixes and fancy cupcakes took over. These bars quietly slipped away from the pantry, but they left behind a zesty taste in memory. Some bakers still make them today for nostalgia. Old photo albums often show lemon bar squares. The flavor is bright and timeless. Would you bake fancy lemon bars for someone special? They are small but mighty in taste. Sometimes the simplest treats leave the biggest smiles. 22nd Southern Buttermilk Pie. Southern Buttermilk Pie was a creamy custard pie from the Depression era. It used buttermilk, sugar, eggs, and vanilla in a flaky crust. Each slice was silky and sweet. Grandmas made it for Sunday dinner after church. The pie baked until golden on top and soft in the middle. It smelled like home and comfort. Kids loved the way the custard trembled but held together. One spoonful felt like a milkshake in pie form. It was creamy and cooling. The recipe needed no fancy tools or hard-to-find items, just pantry staples and a warm oven. It was proof that simple is best. Then richer desserts like chocolate and cream pies became popular. Buttermilk pie gently faded from dessert menus. It stayed in a few family recipe boxes. Today, some bakeries bring it back for local specials. People remember its smooth and mild flavor. It is still loved by those who grew up with it. Would you try a slice of Southern Buttermilk Pie? It tastes like a hug on a plate. Creamy, humble, and full of heart. 23rd. Ambrosia Pudding Pie. Ambrosia Pudding Pie is a Southern favorite filled with fruit, coconut, and whipped pudding. It was served at potlucks and family dinners. The colors are bright, like a bowl of tropical fruit. Grandmas stirred in mandarin oranges, pineapple tidbits, and shredded coconut. Whipped pudding made everything creamy. Some versions added mini marshmallows or cherries on top. Each spoonful had sweet fruit and soft coconut in creamy pudding. It tasted fresh and light. The texture was fun and tropical. It did not need baking, just mix and chill. That made it easy for busy households. It felt fancy but was simple to make. Over time, newer desserts stole the spotlight. Ambrosia slowly left the dessert table, yet some families still make it today. Would you serve Ambrosia Pudding Pie at your next gathering? It brings sunshine to any table. Sweet, creamy, and tropical perfect. 24. Chocolate Mayonnaise. Cake Bars. Chocolate mayonnaise. Cake bars were like chocolate mayonnaise, cake but cut into bars. They included mayo to make the cake moist. The taste was rich, chocolatey, and a bit surprising. Grandmas baked them for school events or church dinners. The batter was stirred in one bowl. After baking, they were cut into squares. These bars were soft but held their shape. A light chocolate glaze sometimes topped them. Kids loved the flavor and ease. They were cheap to make but tasted expensive. Bakers used pantry staples and a touch of mayonnaise to stay moist. The cake stayed tender even after days. Then other bar-style desserts became more popular. These bars fell out of favor. But a few recipe cards still live on. Would you try a bite of chocolate mayonnaise cake bars? One bar might change your dessert ideas. Sometimes creamy surprises are worth a taste. 25. Vinegar Taffy. Vinegar Taffy was a chewy, homemade candy made by stretching sugar, vinegar, and butter. Moms would cook the mix until bubbly, then pour it onto buttered pans. Once it cooled just enough, the kids helped pull and twist it into ropes. The vinegar gave it a soft tang, balancing the sweetness. It smelled like warm sugar and old-fashioned fairs. It was fun to make and even more fun to eat. Grandmas made it for birthdays, holidays, or just to surprise the kids. The candy would stick to your teeth in the best way. It came in light golden colors and sometimes even got wrapped in wax paper. This was a hands-on dessert. Families gathered around the table, pulling and stretching it together. It was more than candy. It was a moment. As store-bought treats became easier to find, Vinegar Taffy disappeared. But it left behind sweet memories of sticky fingers and happy laughs. It was a dessert you could play with. Would you try to pull your own taffy at home? It might be messy, but it is worth the smiles. Old-fashioned fun never really goes out of style. So there you have it. 25 forgotten American desserts that once ruled the dinner table and bake sales. From vinegar pie to broken glass JellO, these nostalgic treats are more than recipes. They're delicious memories worth bringing back. If you love exploring vintage desserts, forgotten recipes, and old-school comfort food, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a slice of food history. Want more tasty time travel? Don't miss our next video here. Click the screen now to keep the tasty memories going.